Hello friends, it's Kayla. It's time for a monthly wrap up. In May, I read books. How many books? 22 books. I read 22 books in May. 7 of them happened in the first 3 days of the month, and that was all my sci-fi. I talked about these relatively thoroughly in my vlog. The first thing I'll say is most of the books I read this month were 3 stars. It was not a good reading month. There were a couple wins in here. There are some 5 stars. There are a couple 4s. But just to save my own, and saying the words 3 stars over and over and over and over again, just assume everything in this video is 3 stars, unless I tell you otherwise. Oh, of course I was missing the one in my stack that I gave more than 3 stars. So let's kick it off with Tranquility. This is that one with that really long and confusing synopsis that's like, there's a woman on a moon colony, there's a man who learns that he can time travel, there's another man in the wilderness of British Columbia, and they're all at different timelines. And I mean, that does sum it up, but I think just go into this knowing that it was a 5-star for me, and that it's a very pandemic plague book. So if you're into that, you'll be into it. If you've read other things from Emily St. John Mandel and you like some commentary on the idea of being an author in general, an almost autobiographical look on what it's like to promote a pandemic book during a pandemic, and also short stories, but they're all connected by the end, and also a little bit of time travel. Like, if you're into those general ideas, I think you'll enjoy this one. Obviously it can stand alone, but it has a bigger impact if you've read Station 11 and The Glass Hotel first. On the flip side, something I thought I would love is Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. And this, for the first like 2/3 of it, I was really on board. There is this woman, you get to learn about her experience as somebody who travels through space, also known as an astronaut. Her and her crew coming upon this ghost ship, much like the Titanic, but in space, a luxury spacecraft where a bunch of people died, disappeared, whatever. They go on board and they're learning about what they think happened. I loved the horror elements of this. I really thought the tension was fantastic. I was generally unsettled, which is fantastic when a book can make me feel that way. But naturally, with it being sci-fi as well, there has to be a lot of conversation about technology and how everything works, and different meetings with different groups of people, lots of technical jargon and science, And I love sci-fi, but it took away from all of the tension that I was enjoying in the horror-ness of it all. So I just don't think that this is my perfect genre generally, while the explanations I thought were good. The reveals themselves were even good, but the feeling that I wanted from it isn't what I got once the pace started to really slow down and it didn't just exist on the ghost ship anymore. So yeah, I struggled with that one a little bit. I also struggled with All Systems Red, which is a bummer, because I know that this is the first in a novella series, and obviously the more that you read, the more you get to know the characters, and there's more plot, and people will tell me to continue. Perhaps someday I will, but I don't know, this didn't do a lot for me. This story exists in the world where different groups of scientists are going on different missions and they have to take a droid with them. And this specific group has a droid who's hacked their own system and is very human-like, is very sarcastic and has commentary on everyone around them and just wants to watch TV. And I don't know, I get why other people liked it. They're a very charming character. It's fun, but I didn't have a great time. Oh look, it's true with the next one too. Interesting, but didn't have a great time. This is They by Kay Dick. It is about the government, they taking away your ability to, I don't know, have your own thoughts and freedoms, and they want to control people, right? They don't want people to be artists and have creative passions. They don't want people to be individuals, live alone, be single, do anything that they deem dangerous to their goals for humanity. And it's definitely interesting. It's odd. It has this peaceful riverside country English setting, but it's also very unsettling because this group of people will come into your home and take anything that they don't want you to have. And we're kind of following an unnamed narrator, though I think you could say that the book is written from 7 different perspectives. If I were to reread it, I would have a better understanding of what I think this book was doing. But there's a whole bunch of characters and they're all just like hanging out and talking about each other and talking about the other characters. But I think like all of these little stories and what they're up to just in their day-to-day lives could all be from like a different person in the group. I get the general goal of this, and especially when it came out in the 70s, a lot of stuff needed to be said. I've just read a lot of similar conversations but told in a more compelling plot in more recent years. In more recent years than the 70s? You weren't alive in the 70s. I don't know what. Anyway, this is Alone Out Here by Riley Redgate. This is the Lord of the Flies in Space that I've been hyped about for 3 years. But I think I've moved on from this type of story, unfortunately. And guess what? It's a 3-star. It didn't do a lot for me. It's following a group of teens. I can't even remember how many, like 100. And the world is an unlivable place. So there are these like spaceships ready to take off at a moment's notice to escape the planet when that time comes. And so then the alarms go off and everyone gets on this ship and it takes off. But they realize that like everybody who's supposed to get on it didn't get on it. All of the people who really know what they're doing didn't get on it. Adults didn't get on, and they're left to fend for themselves. And that involves, you know, various relationships going on, learning things about the spacecraft, learning about, you know, deciding their own goals, creating their own government. A lot of things go on in here. The idea is still interesting. Conversations are still important to be having. I think it's a very frustrating read because you don't really understand where the characters are coming from. You don't really understand all their motivations and their decisions, but also they're teenagers. And so just naturally, like they don't even know the reason for their own decisions. So it doesn't make it a bad book because it's realistic. It just, I don't know. Didn't do a lot for me. Next up, we've got Obsidio, which is another teens in space situation. You know my star rating. This is the 3rd book in the Illuminae files, which is a dossier documents from people on a ship. I always fail to describe the series. Illuminae was a 5-star. Gemini, I think, even was a 5-star. But I actually really think that Illuminae should just stand on its own. And the whole thing doesn't feel complete until you read all 3. But then I almost look back on Gemini like, it wasn't that good. Because it repeated some things from the 1st book. And then moving on to reading the finale to the whole thing, which feels even more so, it just takes away from like what I feel like I thought the series was gonna do and was trying to do. Like I could overlook certain things about Gemini knowing that it was a middle book and it was gonna take us to here. But because this then just did the same thing and repeated all of the things that already happened from the 1st and 2nd book, it was just such a letdown. And I almost would have preferred this to do things that like I hated, so I could feel anger towards this book or feel some type of passion. But instead I'm just left with like, I can't believe how much time I wasted reading this. Then we've got My Life as an Ice Cream Sandwich by E.B. Zaboy. This is about a girl. Ooh, actually, I just read a book called something about a tiger. When You Trap a Tiger. And these are similar in that there's a girl who has a grandparent who's dying. But the books take different takes on it because in one, the girl is sent to be with her grandmother at the end of her life in order to connect. In this book, she is sent away at the end of her grandfather's life so they can handle it as a family and not, you know, add any trauma onto this young girl. So rather than it being about her connecting with her grandfather, which is what I thought the story was going to be, I enjoyed this. I give it 4 stars. It was more about her coming into her own, which also When You Trap a Tiger has the vibe of. I guess this age range in general is often about like finding yourself, finding your voice, feeling like you don't necessarily belong. And throughout the book, Ebony Grace makes new friends and connects with different people in her family and just like comes into her own. The little like sci-fi-ish element is she's kind of inventing this little world in her mind. There's a little comic book strip once in a while where she envisions like what her life should look like as an astronaut, as her grandfather was one of the first Black engineers. I thought it was a really good story. Nothing bad to say about it. Highly recommend. The next video in which I read 5 books was where I reread my questionable favorites. And this vlog wasn't like lifestyle about anything but the books themselves. So my full reviews and discussions throughout the entire books, including spoilers, it's all happened. So I just don't feel like totally getting into all of it. We've got The Sky is Everywhere by Jandy Nelson, which I first gave 4.5 stars. My reread, I gave it 5. It's about a girl whose sister dies and she is trying to grieve, but also looks for escape or connection with 2 different boys. We've got The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson, which I originally gave 5 stars. This time I gave it 4, and it's about a man and a woman who meet on a plane or in an airport, and she decides she's gonna kill his wife. We've got Black Iris by Elliot Wake. This one I originally gave 4.5 stars, and I think I kept my rating. It's about a girl named Lainey who gets involved with a couple new friends at college, but it's not really a college setting, and we find out more about her high school years, why she's on this revenge mission. I can't really talk about much more than that because this is just a very twisty book. Like, a lot of reveals happen. It's super interesting. Far From the Tree by Robin Benway. I think I originally gave 5 stars and kept my rating. Very solid YA contemporary about 3 biological siblings who didn't grow up together. They were adopted or in foster care. One of them got pregnant and put her child up for adoption and now wants to connect, find her biological mother and connect with her siblings. And lastly, the biggest rating change for me from 5 stars to 2 is The Love That's With the World by Emily Henry, about a girl, oh my gosh, she's just getting in a relationship with a boy and she sees weird things. She's getting a message from her grandmother figure who's telling her that she has to save this boy's life. And yeah, her reality, she becomes very disconnected from reality. Another vlog I did was on 5 cozy mysteries. This was my first time exploring the idea of a mystery or thriller book that was more fun and lighthearted, as opposed to dark and intense and bloody. My favorite from the exploration was Dial A For Aunties by Jessie Q. Sitanto, which is about a family business. They do weddings. They all have a different role in the weddings, all of her aunties and her mom. One of them does the singing, one of them does the baking of the cake. She's in charge of the photography. And at the beginning of the book, her mom sets her up on a blind date and she ends up killing him. And they basically spend the book, a lot of things go down, and along the way they're bringing this body around with them, trying to dispose of it, hide it from the authorities, hide it from the man that she is getting involved with at their wedding venue that they're currently at. It's just a lot of hijinks, Finley Donovan vibes. Very fun. My other favorite was A Curious Beginning by Deanna Raybourn, which is the first book in the Veronica Speedwell series, which is a spanning historical fiction romance situation. She is a, well, I want to call her like a butterfly catcher, but she's a very intelligent science lady. Basically, the book kicks off when this man appears and he's like, I have to save you. You're in danger. Let me protect you. And then he dies. And so she's trying to figure out who this man really was, where she comes from, because she doesn't know her parents and he seemed to know, and also who was trying to abduct her and who he was saving her from. He, right before he dies, puts her in the care of this man named Stoker, who has a similar kind of background to her, or interest, hobby, career, whatever. They're really good matches intellectually. They have a really fun banter, and they basically need to stick together to find out what happened to this man, and also to continue to protect her, because he, you know, is a man of his word, and he told this baron who died that he would protect her forever. So they end up in a couple wacky scenarios. They're pretending that they're a couple. They're with this like traveling circus for a bit, and I think it was just a really good setup for a series that I will continue reading. Me reading a series, pretty incredible. And then I also read for that video Underlock Skeleton Key by Gigi Pandian, which is about a girl who works for her family business where they make cool things like moving staircases and hidden bookshelves. And one day she's at a job and there's a woman dead who looks just like her. And we find out that they knew each other, and she thinks that somebody is after her. So she's trying to find out who the murderer is, while just like working at her day job and trying not to be murdered herself. If you're looking for an adult fiction that like could span age ranges, I think teens could most enjoy this of the stack here. I also read Arsenic Adobo, which is about a girl, again, who accidentally maybe murdered a man. There was this restaurant reviewer at her family restaurant. He died soon after. They had a little altercation, and now she is going to be blamed for his murder unless she can find out who really did it, what really happened. This one was far more stressful than I was hoping for. The feelings that I was looking for in the video with this type of read. So overall, it was a bit of a letdown. And then we had Murder at Pirates Cove by Josh Lanyon, which is about a guy. This is the most like cozy mystery. When people talk about cozy mysteries, they often mean like mass market paperback, someone moving to a small town, getting involved in a small business. And oftentimes the main character will end up involved with somebody in law enforcement, because like they're the person who's going to solve the crime. So they end up, you know, working together or what have you. So he has a bookstore and there's like a rival bookstore, and the owner of that bookstore we don't like, and he dies, and then the main character Ellery is blamed because he was apparently murdered with the sword that always sat in the bookstore at the front door. And so he naturally has to find out what happened before he fully gets blamed. I don't know, I don't think I really disliked a lot besides the actual reveal itself, so maybe that played a bigger role in my lack of enjoyment than I even realized. And then lastly, I have 5 books that I don't think I've talked to you much about anywhere, or specifically that I didn't read for videos. This one I'm going to talk about this weekend in a live show for my Literally Dead book club. It's Confessions by Kane Manato, translated by Stephen Snyder. I guess you'd put this in the thriller genre. Some people say it's mystery. I don't know that that feels right for the type of book that it is, as far as me pitching it to people, because you might have different expectations if you call it a thriller, because it's just a lot of internal monologue. There's not a lot of action happening like currently. It's just a lot of thought process and learning about the intentions and motivations of the characters and what happened. So first of all, I give it 5 stars. Second of all, the plot. It's basically about a woman who is just quitting her job. She's a teacher, and she's giving one last lecture to her 7th grade students. There has been recently a tragedy, and she's revealing the truth about what happened. It's a revenge type story, but it's not just written from her perspective. There are long chapters. It's made up of 5 different perspectives. Each of them gets like 50 pages. It doesn't go back and forth between different narrators. It's just you hear about the situation, the aftermath, and what led up to the tragedy, from a couple different perspectives. And there's kind of like a twist, a little reveal in each of the chapters. It's just so interesting. I can't wait to talk about this with you all on Sunday. Highly recommend the audiobook. If you want to pick this up for the live show, I really highly recommend it. If you've been waiting to see my thoughts before you pick it up, do it, listen to it. It's easy to access. It's a quick read. There's a couple different narrators, and it's just fantastically done. Definitely don't want to talk about it anymore until Sunday. I'm really looking forward to that live show with Katie and Gavin. Moving from a really exciting one to a disappointing one. I'm so sorry to report. The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina by Zoraida Cordova was not a win for me. I'm really sad about it. I love magical realism. I thought I loved a generational story, but now I'm hard pressed to think of ones that I have enjoyed. Essentially, the story is about a woman. Here she is, and she is dying, and she calls all of her family to come get their inheritance, but there's more to it than that. And these characters are all going to learn more about her life and her childhood, what she went through, the choices she made, all of her relationships in the past. I would highly recommend this to fans of The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I equally didn't like. While I think Orchidea's life is interesting to learn about, I just don't know that for me, the writing, the feeling behind the writing matched her story. And then the characters who I didn't find their storylines interesting very much at all, but maybe it's because we were more removed from them. Like, there's a whole family, there's so many characters, so many names. There's also like a time jump 7 years in the future where bad things are starting to happen to them. Some of them are dying, and that's why they need to, you know, figure out the truth about Orchidea's past. I feel like those chapters, which takes up the bulk of the book, the writing was so strong and it had this intensity behind it, but the plot itself and the characters did nothing for me. And then the shorter chapters we got about her life was so interesting, but we just didn't cover like everything that I wanted it to cover, and I didn't feel like there was this passion and intensity behind like the writing itself almost. While the writing is beautiful and flowery and like my type, there was just some disconnect for me. That was really sad. There remains interesting conversations and takeaways from this. I think the whole idea of inheritance is a big theme, like not just inheriting, you know, it's not about the money, it's not about all of that. It's about inheriting trauma or inheriting strength. The dynamics between different generations of people and the evolution of different relationships within a family unit. And they're interesting things, but I don't know, it didn't grab me. I didn't feel emotionally impacted by it the way that I feel like I was supposed to. Maybe this was a 2. I don't know. The Mars Room by Rachel Kushner was interesting. I have never read a fiction book that read more like nonfiction. I really felt like this was the author writing about herself and all of her opinions. Like, it felt so authentic and genuine that it almost felt weird. And I know that it's not based on her life at all, but it just read so much like someone telling the story about their life that I've never experienced that before. But then we ended up reading from some perspectives of a couple men that I just ruined the book for me. What I do like is that it's told in very short moments and vignettes and felt very stream of consciousness, something that I enjoy, just like what you're thinking about in the moment. Mundane kind of tasks and situations that don't feel like they, you know, should have an impact on your life, but they were just interesting to read about. It follows her leading up to and being in prison for 2 life sentences. So you know she did something terrible, and it's not really a secret. There's no big twists and turns, I wouldn't say, about how she ended up there. It is interesting, very raw, seeing like what the prison is like and the people that are surrounding her, the things that people are going through. A lot of good commentary generally on the prison system. I don't know, I don't think this is a book that you would look at and think it's really for me anyway. I don't even know what genre you would put this in. But yeah, once it started following like other people, and I just didn't care. I know there was a reason and I know there was an intent that just lost me. And then following the rest of the events throughout the book, I just didn't really like what we were up to. I don't know. Hard to explain that one. This one is How to Be Eaten by Maria Adelman. I'm just trying to remember if anything else was sent to me that I haven't disclosed. I don't think so. It's just these last 2. This is a book that I was interested in because it's about like a support group, and if you might remember, I really disliked Grady Hendrix. Not really disliked. I gave it like 2.5 stars. There was like a horror book about these women from basically famous movies, and them being modernized in text and kind of reimagined. This is similar, but they're like fairy tale mostly characters, which is kind of weird because I feel like they all should have been that. But like then we had a character who was like from The Bachelor, so they're basically just like famous individuals who have been wronged by men. Basically, this is like a bad men book. So we're following one woman who was involved with Bluebeard, who in this book was like a, I don't know, finance guy. billionaire who turned out to be a psychopath. And then we follow Ruby, who a wolf tried to eat her, and now she wears his fur as a coat. We have one girl who like didn't get her fairy tale ending, and she was on the Bachelor TV show. And then there's one girl at the support group who we don't really know about. Her identity's kind of a secret. And we also don't know who brought them all together and why they're at this support group. But we go through like week 1, week 2, week 3, where each chapter, again, it's like 50 to 100 pages. Each girl gets to tell her story. So she talks about the person she was involved with, what went wrong, how she like got out of it, what she needs from this support group. And then there's little bits of them actually being there together, discussing things as the group and like coming together. Again though, this was a 2.5 star. It had me for a while, and then once it got to like the reveal, learning about the things we don't already know going into the book, I don't know why that was a reveal. I feel like there are 100 pages of this book that were wrong. That's the meanest thing I've ever said about a book. I thought the book was going in a certain direction. Even if I couldn't guess who was who, like what was really happening, who was behind the scenes planning, like, you know, like what was really happening. There were 100 different directions it could have gone that would have been interesting. But instead it kind of ended with a weird tale that I didn't enjoy. And then it didn't all just come together at the end in a way that you would expect. It did not feel satisfying at all. While the book said some great things, and the girls, they all learn from each other, and the group themselves like are interesting. They have all of these realizations about, you know, empowerment and how they've been silenced and how they've overcome certain things, what they can learn from each other. There were really great moments. We needed better closure at the end. I don't know, this could just be a me thing because some people have been really enjoying this. That's just the early readers though. I think that book just came out like 2 days ago, so we'll see how. I'll be keeping an eye on reviews to see what like other people just genuinely are thinking. Lastly, I have The Change, which was also sent to me by Kirsten Miller. I was very intrigued by this because I have read a lot of YA island magic girl gang stories, and I was looking forward to reading an adult one, and it didn't disappoint, and I would recommend it to pretty much anyone. I feel really comfortable telling people that they will get exactly what they think they're gonna get out of this story. I don't think it's the most impressive, incredible book I've ever read, but like I understand why Book of the Month recently just chose this. It's just a really solid story that I think a lot of people can enjoy. So basically we have 3 main characters, extremely strong main characters. I have not read women that I feel like I get to understand so well in a while in a book. So each of them are coming together and they have different like powers. It doesn't feel like a witch coven, like let's do spells type of story. Their powers are not controllable necessarily, and they're just a little bit of their lives. So like one of them, she can hear the ghosts of dead people and she wants to help solve their murder. One of the women going through menopause, her hot flashes give her like literal power, and if she gets angry enough she can like burn things. It feels a little superhero-y, but it's also very self-aware and talks about how superhero, supervillain it kind of becomes in the plot. Because basically what these women are doing is they're solving this crime that nobody believes is happening. So there's a dead girl that they find, and then because she can hear ghosts, they discovered there are more dead girls, and the police aren't taking it seriously. Nobody really seems to care, so they're gonna come together to like right these wrongs. It's a very much revenge plot. We also get to learn about the pasts of these women, their past relationships, past careers, how they got to where they're at now, the things that they have gone through, the ways that they're also just like getting revenge against people in their own lives. It's a long one and it's a slow one. It's also very much a bad men are bad type story about like women coming together and women believing women. But within that, you do have to read, much like this one, many scenes where men are just awful, doing awful things, saying awful things. It's long scenes and it will make you angry. But this one is extremely satisfying. I would say it's like Sawkill Girls meets The Night Swim meets the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. It was almost a 5. I think it could have been a little shorter, but the impact is undeniable. So that's everything that I read in the month of May. Let me know if you're going to pick up any of these books, which ones you've already read, if your opinions differ from mine or they're the same. I just love reading through your comments and seeing how you feel about books, even if it's completely different from me, or if you would never read any of these and you're just here for the vibes. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye!